Hello everyone, welcome to City Futures Center seminar series. And I would like to acknowledge we are meeting today on the traditional land of the Yiting people of the Euro Nation. And I would like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and all the First Nation peoples joining us today. So if you're joining us online, please mute yourself and turn off your cameras. And we will have a Q&A session after each presentation, so you can unmute yourself for any questions. Now I would like to hand it over to Professor Susan Thompson, who is the chair of our HDR committee, and she will introduce today's. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks very much, Fatima, and a very warm welcome to everyone. Indeed, it is a very warm day, although it's pretty chilly in this room, so we're nice and cool. Well, this is our final postgraduate seminar as part of the City Futures Research Seminar Series for the year. And we've got two fantastic presentations this afternoon, and as Fatima just said, we'll have the presentation and then a short time for Q&A after the presentation. And if there's time right at the end, we can have some general discussion. And we are, for those who are here in person, we're going to have a gathering after the seminar. I hope that everyone Okay. We've always got to have a little technical glitch that makes it feel real. So that's great. Well, it's my very great pleasure to introduce first up Mohammad Abousaeidi. And Mohammad is a PhD student here in the School of Built Environment, and he is supervised by Gloria Ignata and Megan Nazarin. Mohammad has a background in architecture and urban design, and he's particularly interested in climate-sensitive urban design and architecture and sustainable housing. And his research in this PhD focuses on the significance of passive thermal retrofit strategies in mitigating heat gain and enhancing thermal comfort within social housing units. I mean, this research couldn't be more important and more timely. So I'm not going to say any more about your fantastic research, Mohammad. Why don't you come and tell us all about it? And we welcome you to present, and then we'll have some Q&A. And I will keep an eye on the time. So. Well.
Thank you so much, Susan. Supposed to work with the
use the keyboard, yeah.
with the arrow key. Okay. Okay. So my research is about evaluating the impact of passive thermal retrofits on reducing or providing thermal balance inside high-rise social housing. We know that the climate is changing and it is causing different types of hazards, including sea level rise, change in precipitation patterns, hurricanes, droughts, and extreme heat. And extreme heat itself can cause different problems such as increasing health risk, higher cooling demand, higher energy costs, and lower thermal comfort. Looking into historical data, we see that basically a rise in temperature and sea surface temperature during the past century, which is around 1.5 degrees Celsius and on average annually for the past century. And also we see the increase in the number of hot days in the past century. So we know also that the heat waves are the deadliest natural hazards, that causing around 55% of all natural hazard related deaths and causing around $6.2 billion for Australian workforce. This is also showing the future projection of heat waves, which shows that a number of heat waves, their their peak temperature, the frequency, duration is increasing. So this is for Queensland, and also that one is for southeast of Queensland. But across Australia, we see that if we are already experiencing 4 to 6 hot days per year, we are going to experience 33 to 45 hot days per year by 2070 across all areas in Australia. And also we see that not only the heat waves are increasing, but also they're becoming more long-lasting and more frequent. So why is heat important? So heat can cause different types of health-related problems, such as dehydration, heat exhaustion, hypothermia, respiratory disease, exacerbation of chronic illnesses, heat stroke, and all of that. And there are some research that shows that there is a correlation between high temperature for indoor environment and heat-related problems. So this one by Shamila Hatta, who was a senior, was one of our, I guess he was also working with CFRC, I'm not sure, but he's also a graduate of UNSW. So this shows that the units that are including people with health-related problems experiencing higher temperature compared to those that don't have a health problem. And also this one shows that the correlation between heat wave, different definitions of heat waves, and risk of cardiac arrest. And so my focus is on residential sector, but also specifically on social housing. And we know 1/4 of all Australian houses lack air conditioning systems. So they face problems with providing them comfort. And also we know that we have almost 500,000 social housing across Australia. Around 300,000 of them, or 67%, belongs to public housing, which include more high-rise or unit apartments. That's why I picked public housing as my case study. So the concept of energy poverty, we know that energy poverty basically means if you lack access to adequate energy, and also if you're not able to pay for energy bills. And it might have different components such as high energy costs, low income, building energy efficiency. So each one of them, or a combination of them, can impact energy poverty. And increasing energy poverty could increase the chance of having general health problems. So to address this energy poverty problem, we are focusing on building energy efficiency. Building energy efficiency has different, it can have actually a different approach to address energy poverty, such as smart energy management, especially improvements, energy efficient appliances and all that. But we're focusing on building envelope retrofits that can address reducing any heat gain for indoor environment. And they're not dependent on active systems and HVAC systems. So we're going to face heat waves, and there is no question. We may not face a heat wave this year, but maybe even next week. No one knows. So also, for those who lack air conditioning, they're going to face problems. But for those who are living in a condition that can't afford paying for their energy costs, there is also be a problem when a heat wave occurs. But when a power outage occurs, specifically when there's a long-lasting heat wave, then everyone is in the danger of health problems, and that's where passive solution might help. Passive solution actually cannot cover all the heat gain from heat waves, but they can be very efficient solution to reduce heat hours or hot hours during hot seasons. So these are some of the common retrofit strategies that we use to reduce heat gain. So my research questions, I have 3 main research questions. How does non-HVAC housing respond to extreme temperature in Sydney? What passive thermal retrofits best reduce discomfort hours for hot and cold seasons? And will these retrofits ensure comfort in future climates? So these are the key components involved in my research. I'm trying to simulate different types of retrofit scenarios. There are single scenarios. I'm trying to have a combination of them, but for now, But as part of the research, there are single scenarios. I'm trying two different climate conditions or scenarios. One for a typical meteorological year, which is a typical year for Sydney, and the other one is a RCP 4.5 for mid-century as a future projection provided by CSIRO. We are evaluating the impact of these retrofits both in temperature above 30 degrees Celsius and also below 16 to only look at the extreme conditions. We have two case studies, Moorhead and Northcott, and we are evaluating all unit apartments once based on their orientation and once based on their level. So we set a list of criteria to pick our buildings among a list that was provided by Land and Housing Corporation. And finally, we picked two buildings. One is Moorhead, and the other one is John Northcott at Billboard, and both are located in Redfern. So we put all the obtained data into simulations and building energy modeling through OpenStudio software, which is a user graphic interface of Energy Plus. And so we obtain the data for each one of these components, from windows to external walls and building constructions, and we get the data from Land and Housing Corporation, and we put it into a building component library. We match them with their thermal properties, and finally we simulated the building. We also acquired for the electricity consumption. So these are the energy data that we acquired from Ausgrid energy provider, and shows that basically, it shows the electricity consumption for all units with different Moorhead and Northcott. And what we learned from this was that there's this concept, energy use intensity, which shows the electricity consumption per square meter per year. And the average for Sydney is 150, but for Moorhead, it's 61 kilowatt hour per square meter per year, which is less than a half. And for Northcott, it's even less. It's around 53. It shows that they're actually consuming much less electricity than a standard level across Sydney. And we also try to understand how it can be defined as or it can be interpreted as a thermal comfort. So we put this amount of heating load into simulation to see if we're modeling a simple fan heater in unit apartments, how much comfortable hours it can provide, or how much operating hours a simple fan heater can provide with this amount of electricity. And it shows that around 2.5 or 3 hours per night during the coldest months of the year, these unit apartments can provide heating, actually electricity, or can provide comfort hours. So these are the recipes that I'm trying to simulate, and we have the wall insulations, window glazing, overhang shaders, heat reflective paint on the facade, and window opening areas, increasing the amount of window opening area, because the window opening area at the moment is around 10 centimeters in Sydney, which is due to reducing the risk of children falling out of the window. But we can add to the window opening area if we provide guards. So these are the results. This shows the total amount of hot hours based on orientation. So these are the two actually buildings, and this is now and future. And these lines are showing the total amount of hot hours. The blue one is the baseline scenario, the existing condition of the building. And the others are retrofit scenarios here. So it shows that, for instance, at the moment, Moorhead is experiencing around 200, I'm not sure about that, it should be around 100 hours, hot hours, which is above 30 degrees Celsius. And these retrofits can reduce this amount by, like, for instance, overhang shader can reduce it by 40% in TMY or now, and in the future, it can reduce it by 50%. We also see that basically just looking into what is happening in now and future, we see that the amount of hot hours are increasing in the future, as you see, by 73 hours or 72% across, like in an average. And also we see that the best facing units, like these ones, are experiencing much higher hot temperature comparing to east ones due to the sun path for this building. And also for this building, there are some units or blocks, like these blocks, are experiencing more hot hours due to the more sun gain from both sides. And we also see that, for instance, blocks that are receiving more sunlight from both sides are experiencing more hot hours, and overhang shaders in both actually buildings. Overhang shader can reduce the amount of heat gain or hot hours basically by 40% in the current condition, 50% in the future. This is 34 and 50 for Moscow. So overhang shader overall is the best relative solution to reduce amount total hot hours. This is for the same thing, but it's based on levels. So it is averaging all the units based on their levels. And we see that the lower levels are experiencing less hot hours. That's why I'm actually focusing on high-rise social housing, because low-rise social housing usually don't even experience hot hours because of the surrounding tree or the different heating that or the cooling impacts from the lawn areas around them. And also the difference in wind speed and all of that. And also the ground insulation. But in the higher levels, they just receive sunlight and they're experiencing more hot hours. So lower levels are experiencing less hot hours. And in Northcott, the ground level is actually based on the ground and it's benefiting from Earth's insulation. That's why it has almost zero hot hours during hot seasons. So when comparing them based on cold hours, we see that, for instance, Moorhead is experiencing 439 cold hours in TMY, while Northcott is only experiencing 200. This is because the building construction is different. This one has a double brick walls with a 5 centimeter cavity embedded inside it. But the other one is just precast concrete walls. So the difference in building construction can cause such a different difference for the hot hours. And also, again, we see that in the best units, they experience higher cold hours. And it was a bit surprising, but when you look at the sun path, you see that in the winter we receive less sun, like we only have 2-3 hours in afternoon that allows us to gain heat from the west side. So basically, best units are experiencing more hot hours and more cold hours. Also, external mineral wool appear to be the best retrofit solution to reduce cold hours. So the bottom one is the external mineral wool, followed by internal mineral wool. And they're the best solutions to reduce cold hours during cold seasons by 25% in TMY or now, and 75%, 18% of 75 hours in the future for Moorhead, and 24% and 14% for now in the future in Moscow. This is again based on levels, so cold hours based on levels. Again, we see that the level 1 here has a drastic increase in cold hours, which is due to the parking level, which is a cross-ventilated parking level, causing ventilation and increase the cold hours. And also the top level is experiencing more cold hours because of the heat loss from the roof. And here, the lower, actually the Earth's insulation doesn't work here, and the lower levels has increased cold hours due to the tree shading. And these ones they have different orientation. They are facing north. They're receiving actually more sunlight during the cold season, and that's why they're experiencing less cold hours. So in general, we can say that external mineral wool is the best retrofit scenarios across both buildings and both now and future scenarios for cold season. And for hot seasons, overhang shader is the best scenario to reduce hot hours across both buildings and also both climate conditions. And in the end, external mirror would be decreasing the discomfort hours more because cold hours are more. It's not just because it is efficient at both seasons. So if you're going to have a more efficient passive design, we need to have a combination of these, which is the next step of my research, to like actually simulate a combination of these scenarios to optimize the reducing discomfort hours. And that's it.
Okay, great. Lots of time for questions. So would someone like to ask a question? You reminded them. Oh, yes, yes.
Thank you, Mohammad. That's a very good presentation. It's also in the area that I like as well, because I normally, before going to this program, I did energy modeling. And I was wondering whether, with the effect of shedding in the cold is detrimental, but we love it for the summer. If we're going to combine for the next part, combining between the effect of shedding and the effect of thermal insulation, how do you think in practical it will work? Because in the winter, the shedding will still going to be there unless you make it be able to rotate whether it's possible maintenance-wise for the social kind housing. Because they're kind of like the shedding is not beneficial, but they will still gonna be there unless you actually do something for the winter. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that passive heating you got from the sun in winter that helps.
Yeah, exactly. So we were also thinking about a retractable shader that we can shut it down when it's winter. But as you said, it's going to be like challenging for implementation, specifically for high-rise buildings and for social housing, because it's too costly. So this is one of the challenges, but we're trying to simulate it and to find the optimized like retrofits or combinations. And then we're going to find probably a solution for the implementation.
Other question? Oh, yes. Peter and then Ali. Is that okay? Yeah.
A few comments and then questions. One is that Eastern Sydney is not affected to the same extent as Western Sydney from a heat impact point of view. So it's interesting that you've chosen City of Sydney or Eastern Sydney type of environment, because I think the environment from both a hot and a cold perspective is significantly worse when you get out into Western Sydney, although I know that they don't have high-rise housing commission houses, but it'll be an interesting sort of look at how housing in Western Sydney is also affected, or social housing is also affected by heat and cold impacts. And the other one is, have you compared the social housing in Northcote and Moorcroft to new builds like around Zetland and Green Square to see how they compare from a building materials perspective and their building construction, to see if they're significantly better or equivalent with social housing typologies?
We haven't actually compared them with other buildings. We only have these two buildings, but it is possible that we can add another models, because apparently currently we're working on expanding this research into finding the impacts of these retrofits in different climates, in different parts of the city, in different buildings, different orientations. So it can probably be done with a little more of simulation, and also running a machine learning process that can predict all these variations in different conditions. So yeah, exactly. That's a very actually precise question, and we're trying to address it, hopefully.
Really interesting what you've done so far. So yeah, excellent.
Ali.
You have to forgive my ignorance because I'm not an architect, I'm a social scientist. So I'm asking about materials, which I know nothing about. And I may have missed this because I joined a little bit late, but I was wondering if you considered looking at like flooring and things like that, like carpets versus like wood and things like that, if that you considered looking into that well as shading for heat and cooling regulation? And if you cover that, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, I didn't get the word you used. What was it?
The flooring, like, so say like carpet versus hardwood and like that sort of things in,
Oh, yeah.
if you consider that, if you, like I said, if you mentioned it, sorry.
So, no, actually, we didn't consider like carpet in our building components. We just consider the ceiling materials, construction building materials. That might be a factor, but not everyone is using carpet, and so yeah, that can be a factor.
Thank you.
If I can add to that, probably because if you're looking at high rise and then the floor is basically a boundary to the next floor, which is also another tenant, so you don't really get so much exposure to what's condition outside. That's like probably wasn't really fun.
We might draw it to a conclusion there. Thank you so much, Mohammad. And clearly your research is so pivotal at this point, and no doubt there's going to be some amazing developments from it. So thank you for sharing that with us. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our second speaker for the afternoon session, and welcome now to Yiting Lin. Yiting is a first-year PhD student at City Futures Research Centre, and her academic background spans GIS, urban planning, and human geography. So that's a lot to take in one go. I should also add, before I just tell you a little bit more about Yiting, her supervisors are Chris Pettit, Brian Lee, and Matthew Ning in the City Futures Research Centre. Yiting is very interested and indeed passionate about bringing together public policies with data science through mixed methods. And I think this is really what's fueling her passion for her PhD and the research that she's doing at the moment. She's looking at integrating these subsystems, various subsystems around education, green spaces, affordable housing and public transport in relation to developing planning practices around TODs. And another incredibly timely research project, couldn't be more current, more contemporary, and we need to know a lot about these sorts of developments. So thank you, Yiting, and you come up and tell us all about your research. Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Yiting Lin. I'm a first year PhD here, and I just gone through my confirmation review earlier this week. And today it's my pleasure to present my research proposal titled Measuring Top Performance in the Present and Future Towards Successful Todd in Sydney. This proposal is developed under the supervision of Chris, Brian, and Matt, and I appreciate their guidance as I step into this research area. Here a bit introduction about how I came to this topic as suggested by Gordon. When I first get started, actually I explored a lot of different topics and which were influenced by my existing knowledge and past experience. And back during my master's, I worked on access to public services in major Chinese cities, also within the context of high housing prices and population growth. And then when I look at Sydney, I found that very inevitably, I'm still kind of wearing the lens of accessibility. But this time I wanted to go a step further by considering those systematic elements, shifting from status evaluation to planning practice and a provision perspective. And we're taught serve as the ideal pathway here. This is how I came to this topic, and following its structure into 5 parts. Starting from an introduction to the concept. Inherently, TOD is comprehensive urban development model that integrate land use and transport strategies to create compact and mixed-use communities near transit nodes. Globally, TOT have been widely applied as solutions to distinct urban issues, adapted to suit specific contexts and with different policy priorities. In Australian metropolis, TOT seems to primarily used as a tool to address the most pressing challenges like housing shortage and affordability issues. Correspondingly, the planning footprints have focused on providing more well-located homes, jobs, and services, and with accessibility increasingly mentioned as a key construct. To better interpret TOT strategies in this context, it is timely to have a comprehensive understanding of TOT performance, measuring this both current outcome and future potential could provide more insights into advancing TOT success towards best practice and perfect states. However, measuring TOT success is quite complex due to the multiple objectives that might complicate the definition of success criteria, and existing measurements are mostly context-based, often developed to suit the local characteristic and development needs, while there's currently no standard framework or benchmark. In terms of metric selection, existing approach is sometimes arbitrary, lacking robust validation process. Also, there's still an ongoing debate on the relative importance of these factors. So whether TOT success should be defined by population, housing, transport, land use, or other aspects still need more targeted discussion and evidence. And therefore, a more sophisticated framework with the robust methodology is needed. In this context, considering a job design framework might be a good fit, which enables a holistic consideration and consensus building. Based on it, we come up with following questions and objectives. Overall, how can we best measure, define TOT success, measure its current performance and future potential? This study aims to propose a comprehensive adaptive framework for TOT assessment and planning through job design approach testing in Greater Sydney. Respectively, there are 3 sub-questions and sub-objectives. The first one will aim to identify key elements and metrics for rating TOT success and formulate a TOT maturity index and a topology system. The second one will focus on potential. It aims to explore how scenario planning can be employed for multi-objective optimization in TOT. And throughout these 2 chapters, a job design framework can be adopted to facilitate comprehensive TOT assessment and planning that could balance various elements. And this research design is grounded in a comprehensive review, and the theoretical foundation builds upon the TOT development framework by Burbank, which breaks down the complexity of TOT process into a cyclical way. For defining a successful TOT, here's to acknowledge the entire process, including planning, design, financing, policy, and outcome assessment. Alongside, I summarized some corresponding subjects and topics from relevant research, but not all of them are within my. We narrow the focus to first assessing TOT outcomes by evaluating current performance and then exploring future scenarios, with accessibility serving as a key threat. And this graph here shows how my current review are related to the entire TOT process. And it starts by looking at the key elements of TOT in Sydney. And existing studies indicate that current TOT performance, TOT placemaking is sort of homogeneous, often focusing on single aspect like housing density while overlooking others. And although policy documents often highlight correlation between TOT and improved access, currently there's still a gap in looking at TOT through the accessibility planning perspective. Since the concept of access encompasses the 2 components of transport system and land use integration, it can serve as a thread to incorporate transport, housing, and social infrastructure, connecting these multiple key elements into a functional TOT presence. And this slide further decomposes it into multimodal and survey accessibility. Compared with compact city, the concept of TOD emphasizes multimodal integrated mobility system, and it highlights the need for first last mile solutions and effective transit network connectivity. However, currently in city context, there might be insufficient consideration of the sustainable travel mode, like walking, cycling, or sustainable bus service feeder. Moreover, compared to transport infrastructure, land use change might usually lag behind this, representing an accessibility mismatch. Since surveys often fail to keep pace with housing and population growth, a gap still exists in the incorporation of social infrastructure and amenity provision, like open green space, schools, childcare, healthcare facilities. Furthermore, as infrastructure is increasingly mentioned as a strategic planning tool, a more consistent approach to the full range of infrastructure might be needed, which can also provide opportunities for co-located services or even shared use service. As shown in this graph, characteristic TOD district can be oriented by featured amenities along the corridor to maximize development potential, considering the cross-system impact. This sort of coordination system can be potential to support strategic planning for functional outcomes. And while this sort of integration, I'm not sure, it might be hindered by some systematic challenge, like the sector-led approach to infrastructure planning with the lack of place-based approach. Although existing policy and planning documents acknowledge the need to improve the sequencing of housing and infrastructure development for balanced growth, this gap still remains largely unaddressed in current practice and academic research. Therefore, this study advocates for a job design approach which could provide opportunities for coordination across these sectors or systems. And job design fits well with this research due to its systematic system thinking paradigm and emphasis on collective decision making. This makes job design an ideal framework for considering trade-offs among various elements and development priorities in TOD. Accordingly, we adopt job design methodological framework of the 6 questions and 6 models, referencing the original framework here. The first stage of assessment includes context understanding, operational process, and state evaluation. And the second stage includes scenario planning, impact simulation, and reaching final agreement. Based on this structured way, we plan to adopt this framework to TOD assessment and planning. In the first 3 models, it will define TOD success by decomposing TOD elements, scoping the involved systems, and then develop a framework to measure performance. In the last 3 models, it will develop TOD future scenarios by modeling and sketch planning, and then evaluate these scenarios based on the earlier developed framework. And finally, the vision optimization process can be determined will determine the effective strategies to achieve TOD success. Then moving to specific methods, the first involves using a set of comprehensive metrics to define success. In existing studies, the measurement dimensions generally spans social, economic, environmental aspects. The operational framework typically builds upon the classic 3D and extended 6D principles. Moreover, I look to connect these key dimensions with the local urban challenge, linking TOD success with the more specific development objectives. And while the current summary here is quite preliminary, it will be later on refined to a more comprehensive way. More specifically, here I summarize the pool of commonly used metrics derived from literature, practices, and online tools, which can be applied to score TOD performance. Under different frameworks, it is noticeable that there are certain overlaps and inconsistencies across dimensions. It highlights the need to build a more sophisticated framework through robust validation procedures. And further, to integrate these metrics to classified thought, the no-place model can offer a conceptual framework to develop strategies based on the balance between transit accessibility and land use integration. This model has been constantly enhanced by incorporating additional factors. For example, the 3D framework extends the dimension of unrealized economic potential. And based on this prototype, we may plan to interpret the existing thought index and potential thought index into this framework. Other further dimensions may also be later on incorporated through methods like factor analysis or other algorithms. This proposed framework will be applied and tested in Greater Sydney. For current state measurement, a macro scale analysis will include all Tier 1 and Tier 2 stations, and this broad analysis will result in a ranking of top performance. And further, to explore future potential, the focus will zoom in on the Central Coast region, involving 4 Tier 2 stations. In Central Coast area, as the region on the rise, it provides potential for providing affordable housing and diverse housing options while accommodating population growth along the corridors. Meanwhile, feasibility challenges still remain regarding resourcing constraints and funding support. With both opportunities and challenge, this area offers a suitable case for this study to explore top performance and potential. This case study will be conducted through workshops organized by City Future in partnership with Central Coast Council, and my PhD research will only be based on part of it. First workshop will focus on selecting and weighting metrics for thought assessment. By employing a multi-criteria decision analysis combined with Delphi techniques, this process will select the most effective metrics and identify the relative importance of different components. And based on the feedback provided by participants, this research will synthesize those insights regarding why these elements should be selected and considered essential, and providing more compelling evidence and justification to demonstrate their importance. Finally, this session may end with an agreed framework for thought measurement. And moving on to the second workshop, exploring thought potential, we will adopt a scenario planning approach to envision and evaluate development pathways. This process will begin with a co-design of alternative future by participants. 4 goal-oriented scenarios will be developed aligned with broader development goals. For example, compact city, habitable community, net zero district, and 15 million neighborhoods. And afterward, these scenarios can be evaluated using the framework developed earlier in the first workshop and scored against the success criteria. And this process can be designed to be iterative, where scenarios can be constantly improved and to achieve a higher performance score. In this process, several digital tools might be used, including Pocket-Style for designing housing options and assessing financial feasibility, and cycling infrastructure scenario builder for planning bike path and assessing potential impacts, and online what-if and envision tools for assessing land suitability for future growth. These tools will enable real-time visualization and create a responsive decision-making environment. And finally, the outcome of this research could inform more targeted thought strategy and place-based approach, support resource allocation and investment decision. Academically, this study seeks to extend the discussion of thought success and develop a robust methodology through joint design approach, which can be flexible and tailored to other contexts, contributing to international studies. And finally, here's the key reference. That's all my presentation. Thanks so much for attention. I would appreciate your feedback, comments, or any advice. Thank you.
Questions, comments, feedback? Yes.
Thanks, Yiting. Very good presentation. This reminded me because, in Green Star assessment, in Australia, we have Green Star building and we also have Green Star communities. And that's a framework to assess precinct level. And I remember it's also like if you precinct have access, this credit for access on livability, access to amenities, access to healthy living, in addition to like economic, environmental, and so that reminds me with this transfer-oriented development. And because Green Star community is basically an already established assessment framework for precinct level in Australia, I wonder whether your assessment would be actually either overlay or is that going to be similar, or is that going to be adding on to that, or how is that going to be add on to what already we have in the industry? Maybe that's another thing to look.
Yeah, I think Green Square is a really good example of precinct development. And although it's not in the current New South Wales HOT program, it's not within the Tier 1 or Tier 2 station. And my studies is currently scoped within the top program. And I could also learn from other stations, although they are not incorporated. Green Square is a very excellent.
Green Square, Green Star. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Green Star.
Green Star. So it's
Green Building Council in
Australia.
Australia.
So they have a building level. They have renew and design, and there is performance, Green Star performance. They also have Green Star communities. This Green Star community is a framework that assess the environmental holistic performance of precinct level. So I wonder this actually, measure up or add on, or can be, because they do assessment, which is the first part of your PhD, might be feeding to each other or maybe contribute or add on. How's that?
Sorry, no, it's my first day in Australia. I don't really know about this. And building and green building energy consumption is very out of my expertise. And
maybe I'll show you later.
Yeah, we can talk about this later. And my current research is mostly focused on more social economic side, and environmental is kind of the weaknesses of my knowledge.
Any other questions?
I'll just make a comment. I thought it was excellent presentation. Really interested in the depth you're going into with your work. I think it's brilliant, and I hope you passed your confirmation review. That was only comment.
I think Yiting will be interesting to when you involve the communities that are being, I was going to say impacted, but let's say communities who will be hopefully benefiting from the TODs. There's certainly a lot of discussion and debate about this sort of development in Sydney at the moment. So that will certainly be an interesting aspect of your work.
Current studies from study look at TOD at the community scale, and we wanted to look at the transit-oriented communities or transit-oriented neighborhoods, which is a more small-scale studies. It can also align with the objective, like 15-minute neighborhoods.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I think there are significant cultural issues in people changing behaviours, even if the infrastructure is there to support that. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll immediately take that up, but that's going to be interesting. Yeah.
I think the other comment is about NIMBYism, how you treat the Australian context with, I'd imagine our rolling out some of these systems is very different to the Chinese example, where you probably don't get a lot of say in what goes on. I think it is interesting the success of the metro line in Sydney has been unbelievable. It's the first public infrastructure that I've seen that's been supported effectively by the general public. I think TOD is working for a lot of people who can see their land values increasing, but I think as Susan says we don't realise the community benefits that we're going to gain out of this long term, and we do have to change our, I suppose, our understanding and our utility. But yeah, interesting.
That's true.
Another question?
I'm not sure if I got the right point, but the thought you mentioned here is in Australian context.
Yeah.
Because in New South Wales government, the thought interpretation is different with the original thought in America. Yeah, because the thought in New South Wales government is interpreted as transport-oriented development, but the original theory from Mr. Council in 1993 is actually called transit-oriented development. So I'm be very interesting your assessment framework thinking about the different or shape of the TOD concept.
Yes, that's a very intriguing and interesting part because currently in Sydney context, almost all those policy documents are detailing about the housing issues, and there's actually not much about transport infrastructure. And only in recent days, there are certain statement about like active transport linkage and other connection solutions. And comparing to the international context, I guess like in American or European countries, they might put more emphasis on the on curbing the car dependency or curbing urban sprawl issues. And I guess we could, in my research, my review, I could look into the international context and see what Sydney can learn from other countries, and if that fits into this context, that would be a really interesting part. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great question. Any other questions or comments? We've had very good time this afternoon, and I guess maybe that augurs well for our networking and gathering together. But thank you very, very much, Yiting and Mohammad. I'll give you another round of. Aren't we lucky to have such fantastic PhD students in our City Futures Research Centre? And I also would just, as well as thanking our speakers, thank you for coming along here and online. And I want to particularly thank Fatima and Parianne for all their background, backroom organising, and it's been a very seamless presentation and seminar today. So thank you very much. And just to remind those of you who are here, if you'd like to come, we're having it in the gallery, aren't we? Our refreshments. Yes, yes. So please come along and have some refreshment and a bit of chat and more discussion about the projects and meet some new people. So that'll be great. And I think Fatima, you're wanting to say something too.
Yes.
Yes. I'll hand over to you.
Next week, we will have Dr. Jin Zhu, who is an assistant professor at the University of Hong Kong. And he will be presenting his research on COVID-19 as a disruption to China's 10-year neutrality initiative. So join us in a week to hear that presentation. Thanks, everyone. And I wish everyone a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.